leave government on autopilot would be severe. Taxes would rise from about 15% of the economy to 23%, et cetera. And just in case you're interested, it's in the Washington Times. House of Representatives is now in session. Thanks for being with us on the Washington Journal this morning.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., June 23, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Mike Fitzpatrick to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour and each member other than the majority or minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 11:50 a.m. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's time, after a decade, to wind down this American-Afghanistan adventure. With his speech last night, President Obama started a process America needs to accelerate, removing 100,000 combat troops from Afghanistan. I supported the initial move 10 years ago against the Taliban in Afghanistan. It began on a very hopeful note, even with people like Iran working with the United States in that critical 2001-2002 post-9/11 era. It was a tragic mistake not to finish the job and withdraw with global support. Instead, the Bush administration, sadly with support from too many in Congress, started a reckless, flawed, and ultimately tragic war in Iraq. President Obama reasonably says that we won't try to make Afghanistan a perfect place. We won't because we can't. America has already invested enough. Direct costs of over 1,500 American lives, approaching $1.5 trillion. Indirect and long-term will be much greater. Bear in mind, we've invested $2 trillion in the war against terror, and the long-term costs are going to be between $4 and $6 trillion. In Afghanistan, ultimately, there will be a negotiated settlement with the least worst guys, the Taliban and warlords, assorted tribal strongmen. It's already started. We cannot afford to continue this effort, not when crying needs are here in America to rebuild and renew our country. Last week, the American mayors got it right when they called this question and called for renewed investment here at home. The tragedy is that it's not ultimately going to make that much difference the longer we're there and the more we fight. Whether it's going to be 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, far in the future, it's not going to look that much difference in terms of the ultimate outcome in Afghanistan. America needs to be engaged in this dangerous region. It needs to help Afghanistan. It needs to help the Pakistani people. It needs to be involved both diplomatically and with development assistance. No longer do we need to have combat troops being a part of that mission. Thank you, and I yield back.
The Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Tennessee, Mrs. Blackburn, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this week, my Republican female colleagues spent an hour on the floor of this great chamber talking about why they have chosen to come to Congress, talking about why they have chosen to leave the private sector and come to the public sector, and talked about why it is so important, so vitally important, that they chose to come as Republican women. I think that as you listened to that debate, their stories were inspiring. You realized the diversity of the background of the Republican women that have come to this chamber, the richness of the experiences, the life experiences that they have brought with them. You also realized how solidly and firmly committed they are to strengthening and preserving this great nation. I think it's fair to say that our Republican philosophy of government centers on faith, family, freedom, hope, opportunity, and preserving those tenets that really underpin this nation. I can say that as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a small business owner, I've had the blessing of learning firsthand how very important it is that we take our conservative philosophy of life and government into the public sector of our nation. Daily, we work to preserve opportunities for all of our children and our grandchildren. We work to make certain that each and every child in our presence knows the value of and realizes there is an opportunity for them to achieve the American dream, that it is a good thing, a healthy thing, for them to dream big dreams and to work very hard to make those dreams come true. We know and we teach our children, in our families, in our extended families, in our classrooms, that if you work hard, you exercise discipline, you show integrity, and you put others first, that inevitably you're going to prevail and enjoy seeing your dreams come true in the marketplace of products and ideas. We all know, and we work hard so that our children don't have to work harder. We work hard so that we're giving more opportunities to the next generation. That is why you're going to see our Republican conference women continue to lead the fight on preserving jobs, rebuilding this economy, making certain that the 21st century economy is jobs rich for our children and our grandchildren. That is why we have taken the lead on the issue of health care. Women are the drivers when it comes to health care decisions, and we are committed to making certain that we reverse this course that we are on with Obamacare, and that we push to repeal that law, and that we make certain we preserve access to affordable health care for everyone in this nation. We are committed to strengthening our nation, our economy, jobs, strengthening our people, and making certain that we secure freedom for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Rangel, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I should unanimous consent to revise the consent.
Without objection.
My colleague, once again I come before this House to ask you to reconsider establishing the draft. I know some of you think politically this doesn't make sense, but after listening to the President last night, the only people that I saw that were making sacrifices in these wars that have been undeclared have been our troops. They have volunteered. They come from communities that most of them are not wealthy, but when they get there, they defend the flag. Every war, every time our nation is threatened, all of the American people should be prepared to make some sacrifice. Those of us in Congress, when we authorize troops to go overseas, should not say that we have volunteers willing to do it. We should say that we have Americans. They come from our families, our communities, our state, and their wealth should not even be an issue. Everyone should be up at bat. Now that the President has dramatically reduced the need for all of these volunteers, why don't we mandate that every American make some sacrifice, Let them be trained during this transition as we withdraw our troops. Let them be able to do something to make certain that America remains strong. This is too serious an issue. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a moral issue. Trillions of dollars are spent in undeclared wars. But who's paying for it? The poorest among us, the lesser among us, in healthcare and education and homelessness and joblessness. And now, the wealthiest of Americans have the lowest tax rates since 1950. And really, it just bothers people when you say they too should make some sacrifices, not just for the war that I don't support, but for the security, the economic security of this nation, where the debt ceiling is going to be an issue, and yet those that are paying for the cuts have nothing to do with the crisis that we're in. So I conclude I'll be back in support of H.R. 1152, and I will ask you to consider that as we wind down from our involvement in the Middle East, think about giving some relief to our volunteers. Think about asking young Americans to make some type of commitment. Think about having an America that says, yes, I support the involvement and am prepared to make sacrifices, which includes my family, my community, and our great nation. We should not just have professional volunteers. It is not America. It is not moral. And when our country's involved, everyone should be prepared either to stand up and be counted or don't support this type of involvement. It is not just costly financially, but how America looks throughout the world, especially among our young people, most of whom do not know any period of time that we haven't been involved in a war. So if we're not prepared to be honest enough to call a war, if we're not prepared to have the Congress to put every president, Republican or Democrat, on the line for constitutional reasons, for God's sake, let's find some fairness as we ask people to put their lives on the line for our great nation. And it's not just their lives. It's not just how they come back home, but the mental disturbance and problems that we're bringing to our great country is going to be not just trillions of dollars, but adversely affecting our ability to deal with education and training and technology and research while we try so desperately hard to bring these people to some type of normality for the sacrifices they made to our country. So H.R. 1132 only says if we have to be involved, don't have just a small segment of our great nation pay the ultimate sacrifice while others make no sacrifice at all. Please consider a bill that mandates that everybody from 18 to 25, 26 do some type of mandatory service for our great country. And we will only select those people that we need for the military. And if indeed it's a transition that we support, it means that they can support our country, our national security, support our armed forces, and not really, hopefully, be in harm's way. Please consider it, and please rest assured I will return with this plea from time to time. I yield back, Mr. Speaker, the balance of my time, and I thank this House for the opportunity.
Gentleman's time has expired. The Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, messages from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Secretary.
I'm directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives messages in writing.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Woodall, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I am pleased to rise today after the former chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. I want to talk about taxes today, but I want to associate myself with the previous speaker's comments about how we make different decisions when we have skin in the game, because that is absolutely something that we are losing in this country. We are losing what used to be that common value that we rise and we fall together. I see my colleague from the Rules Committee, Mr. McGovern, sitting in the chamber today, and he tells the committee on a regular basis, we need to pay for those things that we do. We're involved in wars, and we need to pay. We need to have a populace that believes in what we're doing in such a way that they are willing to sacrifice not just their time, but their treasure to support those measures. And when we don't have folks who have skin in the game, we make different decisions. When a minority of the folks get the benefit, or a minority of the folks are bearing the burden, we make different decisions. Now, the former chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is absolutely right. We have the lowest tax rates among the highest earning individuals that we've had in this country since 1950. Now, what the gentleman did not mention is that we also have the lowest tax rates that we've had in this country for the lowest income individuals that we've ever had. We have fewer Americans paying income tax today than at any time since the 1950s, since the expansion of the income tax that happened there during World War II. Now, hear that. We have the wealthiest paying the least that they have ever paid as a percent as a marginal rate. They're actually paying more than they've ever paid as a percentage of all the federal receipts in this country. We have the lowest income individuals paying the least they've ever paid as a percentage of the income that comes in this country. And I say to you, Mr. Speaker, that much like we make bad decisions about foreign policy when we don't all have skin in the game, we make bad decisions about economic policy when we don't have skin in the game. Now, when we talk about Iraq and Afghanistan, I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, those are complicated solutions. It is not obvious to me how we move from today to peace. I don't know how we get that done. We have externalities at play there that we don't have control over, but not so with our tax code. Folks, when you look at the American economy, there is nothing that is going on with the American economy that we did not do to ourselves. Think about that. Anybody, Mr. Speaker, do you have any constituents back home who've lost their jobs to corporations that have moved overseas? I do. And yet we continue to have the highest corporate tax rate in the world in America. Now, who decides that? We do. We decide that's the kind of country we want to live in, and we can change it. Folks, there is nothing wrong with America that we collectively can't fix. Now, I've introduced a bill that I believe is going to make a dramatic impact in that direction. It's called the Fair Tax. It's H.R. 25 in the House. It's S. 13 in the Senate. And, Mr. Speaker, as you know, it is the most broadly co-sponsored piece of tax reform legislation in either body. In fact, it's the most widely co-sponsored piece of legislation on tax reform in both bodies. And what the Fair Tax does is this. It's no magic solution, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't have some sort of clever math that's going to make everything okay. It simply goes into the American tax code and erases it and says, if you could start with a blank sheet of paper, what would you do? And, Mr. Speaker, we can. We can start with a blank sheet of paper. We can choose our own destiny. We can make sure that we're making the best decisions for jobs and the economy in this country. The Fair Tax does this. It eliminates the income tax code, that income tax that punishes people for what they earn. And it changes that tax code to a tax code that collects taxes based on what people spend. I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, it pains me every time I open up the Wall Street Journal and it bemoans the fact that American consumerism is in decline. But why can't we celebrate American savings? Why do we have to celebrate American consumption? And the reason is because we have been building an economy based on an income tax code that is based on debt and refinancing and debt and refinancing, but we can change that today, Mr. Speaker. We have 1 billion new consumers coming online in China, 1 billion new consumers coming online in India, and they want what we produce. The Fair Tax erases the income tax code that forces American productivity overseas, forces American jobs overseas, and it returns us to our roots as a country. Our roots as a country that reward productivity, that encourage folks to stay. There's only one taxpayer in this country. I know we have a corporate income tax. I know we have taxes on goods and services and excise taxes and on and on and on. But there's only one taxpayer in the American economy, and that is the American consumer, because every single tax we have rolls downhill. You want to charge that corporation tax, you want to charge Walmart an excise tax, what do you think is going to happen at Walmart? Prices are going to go up. You want to charge Coke a sugar tax? What do you think is going to happen to the price of your Coke? The price of Coke is going to go up. One taxpayer in this country, the American consumer. Now, this is a radical idea. I won't kid you. And by radical, I mean it's the same one Thomas Jefferson had. By radical, I mean it's the same one Alexander Hamilton had. By radical, I mean we haven't done it in the last 100 years, but we can do it today, Mr. Speaker, with H.R. 25 and S.13. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, for 5 minutes. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, last night the President outlined his strategy for Afghanistan, which included a drawdown of 10,000 troops by the end of this year and an additional 23,000 by the end of next year. I believe this is insufficient, and I fear that it means more of the same for the next 18 months. The same strategy means the same cost, and I'm sad to say even more casualties. More American soldiers losing their lives in support of an Afghan government that is terribly corrupt and incompetent. We've been doing this for 10 years. It's the longest war in our history, Mr. Speaker. Enough. Our focus should be on encouraging a negotiated settlement, a political solution, and bringing our troops home where they belong. Our troops are incredible men and women. I am in awe of their dedication and their commitment. They don't belong in the middle of mountains and deserts fighting a cruel war. According to the Pentagon's own figures, U.S. and coalition casualties in Afghanistan are steadily rising. Last month was a record high for the number of coalition forces killed. March and April were also the worst respective months of the war in terms of casualties for U.S. forces, coalition forces, and Afghan civilians. A poll last month by the International Council on Security and Development found that Afghans are overwhelmingly opposed to the current U.S. strategy, with nearly 8 in 10 believing that U.S. and coalition operations are, quote, bad for their country, end quote. These are serious matters, serious consequences of the strategy the U.S. will pursue at least through next year. We need a change in direction now, Mr. Speaker, not 18 months from now. We are borrowing nearly $10 billion a month to pay for military operations in Afghanistan. Borrowing. We're not paying for it. We're putting it on our national credit card. Our kids and our grandkids will pay the price. Each day we remain in Afghanistan increases that burden. We are currently having debates about how to reduce our deficit and debt. There are some who have advocated deep cuts in programs that help the poor, in Pell Grants and in infrastructure. For those who support the status quo in Afghanistan, let me ask, where is the sense in borrowing money to build a bridge or a school in Afghanistan that later gets blown up while telling our cities and towns that we have no money to help them with their needs? It's nuts. Some of our biggest problems, Mr. Speaker, are not halfway around the world, they're halfway down the block. Americans are willing to do whatever is necessary to ensure our national security. But let me remind my colleagues that national security includes economic security. It means jobs. It means rather than nation-building on a far-off land, we need to do some more nation-building right here at home. Contrary to the tired and ugly rhetoric employed by Senator McCain yesterday towards thoughtful critics of our current strategy in Afghanistan and its consequences, I'm not an isolationist. As my colleagues know, I firmly support human rights and the U.S. being engaged around the world. Those who advocate a political solution in Afghanistan are not isolationists. I don't believe we should walk away from the Afghan people, but tens of thousands of U.S. boots on the ground in Afghanistan does little, in my view, to advance the cause of peace, protect the rights of women and ethnic minorities, or strengthen civil society. If you want to protect Afghan women, we must end the violence. You end the violence by ending the war. You end the war through a political solution. I have great respect for President Obama. I believe he has the potential to be a great president. I also realize, as Lyndon Johnson once said, it's easy to get into war, hard as hell to get out of one. It is not easy to end this war. It won't be neat or pretty. But I believe with all my heart it's in our national security interests to focus on al-Qaeda and not waste our precious blood and treasure in a conflict that can only be ended through a political solution. Rather than crafting a compromise and trying to chart a middle course, I believe we need to change course. I urge the President of the United States to rethink our Afghan policy, rethink it in a way that brings our troops home sooner rather than later. I yield back my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, we have a group of people in the United States who are all volunteers that I call the American Angels Abroad. They are those thousands of Peace Corps volunteers throughout the world that are helping third world countries in many different ways. They go to remote areas of the world, far from home, far from their families. They work in very primitive conditions, but yet they're those angels that are trying to help other people throughout the world, and they're called the Peace Corps volunteers. The Peace Corps started as an idea of President Kennedy back in 1960 when he spoke to the University of Michigan and encouraged those students to volunteer to help America abroad. And finally, in 1961, he started the Peace Corps. Since then, over 200,000 Americans, mainly young people, mainly females, have volunteered to go around the world representing the United States. It is very hard work being a Peace Corps volunteer. They deal with issues that most Americans never deal with, just simple basic necessities of electricity and water and matters such as that. They do without, or they're difficult to find in the remote areas where they are, because they're helping other people that don't have those things that we have in the United States. Generally, they work alone when they are in foreign countries. But all is not well with the Peace Corps, Mr. Speaker, because during the time since President Kennedy started the Peace Corps and those wonderful people go overseas, many times those volunteers, those young Americans, become victims of crime in these foreign countries. And when they become victims of crime, in some cases, our own country abandons them. Between 2000 and 2009, the Peace Corps itself says there were over 221 rapes and attempted rapes, almost 150 major sexual attacks, and 700 other sexual assaults. That's 1,000 crimes against American Peace Corps volunteers. Recently, the Peace Corps has announced that there's an average of 22 rapes a year against American Peace Corps volunteers somewhere in another country. This is not acceptable, Mr. Speaker. We are talking about real people. They're real stories, and they are real victims. I'd like to mention just one of those persons that I know personally. I've gotten to know Jess Smochek since this crime against her has occurred. She joined the Peace Corps in 2004. On her first day as a Peace Corps volunteer in Bangladesh, a group of men started sexually groping her as she was walking to the house that she was to live in. But no one in the Peace Corps did anything about this assault. She told the Peace Corps staff over and over again that she felt unsafe in Bangladesh and the situation she was in, but the Peace Corps didn't do anything. Months later, she came in contact with the same men who then kidnapped her. They beat her, they sexually assaulted her, but they weren't through. They abandoned her and threw her in an alley somewhere in Bangladesh, and no one did anything. According to Jess, the Peace Corps did everything they could to cover this up because they seemed to be more worried about American relationship with Bangladesh than they were about this American volunteer that was assaulted and a victim of crime. Jess says that the Peace Corps not only didn't do anything, they blamed her for the conduct of others. They blamed her for being a sexual assault victim. Mr. Speaker, a rape victim is never to be blamed for the crime that is committed against her. It is the fault of the criminal offender, whether it occurs in the United States or abroad. And we need to understand that these precious people who go overseas and represent us somewhere in the world, when a crime is committed against them, we need to take their side. We need to be supportive of those individuals. And we don't assume they did anything wrong because they did not do anything wrong when they became a victim of crime. They were just victims of crime, and the person that should be held accountable is the criminal, and not to blame the victim. Mr. Speaker, rape is never the fault of the victim. It's always the fault of the perpetrator. But Jess got no satisfaction from the Peace Corps. No one did anything. When she got home, she was told to tell other people that she was coming back to the United States for medical reasons, but to have her wisdom teeth pulled, not for the sexual assault that was committed against her. This was Jess's case, and a few others were brought to light recently by ABC News in 2020, and now more and more of these Peace Corps volunteers over the years are coming forward and telling us about their stories. Mainly they are women. We recently had a hearing in Foreign Affairs about this situation, and their stories were heart-wrenching. And so now it's time to pass legislation to protect these women, to give them basic victim services, and that is what we will be doing in the next few days along with the Senate. Mr. Speaker, people cry peace, peace, but there can be no peace for American angels abroad until they are treated with the dignity that they deserve and the support of the United States in helping the Peace Corps readjust itself to become a better institution. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Woolsey, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, like many Americans, I was profoundly disappointed in President Obama's announcement last night. I had hoped that he would offer an Afghanistan troop drawdown that was significant, swift, and sizable. Sadly, the proposal failed on all 3 counts. Now is the time for bold action and decision-making to bring our nation's Afghanistan policy in line with what the American people want, while recognizing the deep and grave toll this war has taken on our global credibility and our national security. Instead, the administration's office was to largely stay the course. Instead, President Obama chose to perpetuate a war that is not only bankrupting us morally, but fiscally as well. The loss in blood and treasure cannot be underestimated. The American people have been enormously patient, Mr. Speaker. They have endured great sacrifice, but after nearly a decade of war, they're weary of losing their bravest men and women and their hard-earned tax dollars to a policy that simply has not achieved its goals. We are not more secure. The Afghanistan leadership wants us out, and their people do not appreciate our sacrifice. This is not a partisan issue. When asked, the majority of Americans want our troops to come home, and not several years into the future. No, they want our troops to come home now. Abandoning this military policy does not mean that we will abandon the people of Afghanistan. A smart security plan would provide for development and reconciliation. It would bring the international community together and help the Afghan people move towards a sustainable future through economic and domestic support, among other means. Mr. Speaker, more than 1,600 lives have been lost. Where will it end? When will our sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, friends and people we know in the community come home from Afghanistan? How many empty chairs are there at the dinner table tonight? When will the heartbreak end? And let's talk about the economic cost. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to talk about dollars and cents, but how this and other actions we take are costing us too much money. Well, while we stand here, money is flying out of our Treasury to support this war. Try $10 billion a month. Imagine what we could do with $10 billion a month. Just last week, this House voted to take food from the mouths of pregnant women and their children. We're supposed to pinch pennies on important investments like our children and others American projects, while we waste huge sums on a failed war. This boggles the mind, and it shortchanges the needs we have right here at home. It is long past time, Mr. Speaker, that we put an end to this madness. It is time to bring our troops home, all of our troops, safely home. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's something that I'll personally never forget. And that occurred in April of 2007. and I'll get to why that is something I'll never forget in a second. That's when Majority Leader Senator Harry Reid said of Iraq, quote, "I believe myself that the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and you have to make your own decisions as to what the President knows," he said, "is that this war is lost and that the surge is not accomplishing anything as indicated by the extreme violence in Iraq." As in 2007, Senate Majority Leader Reid was in a rush to the exits in Iraq and a rush to declare the war had been lost. Now, why was that important to me? Because I was in Afghanistan at that time, or a nation by Afghanistan, getting ready to fly a KC-135 aircraft into combat in Afghanistan, over there. And as I was on the treadmill exercising, I saw what the number 4 most powerful guy in politics said, and I felt it in my soul. I felt anger. I knew that there was celebrating in the caves in Iraq and in the caves in Afghanistan because the United States said we were going to lose. Well, guess what? It took the brave leadership of somebody to say we will not lose in Iraq, and we're on the verge of victory. And we had a surge in Iraq, and today it appears to be a more stabilizing situation, and hopefully in 10 years, Iraq will be an example of democracy in the Middle East. Last night I heard the President say nothing of the word victory in Afghanistan, but talk about how this is the beginning of the end. General McChrystal recommended to the President that to win in Afghanistan we need 80,000 additional troops. Mr. President, at a bare minimum we need 40,000 additional troops. The President gave 30,000. And in giving the 30,000, he immediately gave a timeline for withdrawal. Now, I will tell you the Taliban are used to fighting for long periods of time, and they know that if they simply have to wait another couple years, that is an encouragement to them. But I supported and support what the President was doing in Afghanistan up until last night, even though I believe he should have given the troops required for victory. Victory. But last night I saw that all troops are going to be pulled out, all the surge troops are going to be pulled out of Afghanistan magically by Election Day. As a military pilot, I can tell you, as an Air National Guard pilot still, I can tell you, the soldiers are weary of war. The American people is weary of war. But leadership is not about saying, we're tired, we're going to quit. It's about standing up for freedom and standing against those that would destroy our way of life. I was in Afghanistan just a month ago talking to generals on the ground who say we literally have turned a corner in Afghanistan. It is bewildering to me that yesterday we send a message that we're wrapping this thing up and it's the beginning of the end before we have seen that victory arrive. Let me ask you, do you believe last night in the President's speech that the Taliban was sad to hear what he was saying, or that they were happy to hear it? Ladies and gentlemen, just as Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid couldn't have been in a bigger hurry for the exits to Iraq, he was proven wrong. So too, if we stick this out, will those that say we cannot win be proven wrong again? America has a vested interest in seeing an Afghanistan that can stand up against terrorism, that can begin to defend itself against terrorists who seek to overthrow their country, who seeks to overthrow Pakistan, and can do so with limited U.S. help. That is how we begin to see victory. Or we can just give up. I can tell you that as a military member and the military members I've talked to, we don't want to have to be there another day. But we also don't want to come home in any condition less than total victory. Let us finish the job. Let the generals on the ground have the tools they need to finish the job. How we get good news and turn that into an immediate pullout of Afghanistan is beyond me. But, Mr. President, I did not hear you once last night mention the word victory in your speech. I hope that was a needless and sad omission from your speech and did not reflect what you believe in Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, we can win. America only loses when we choose to. America will win in Afghanistan. Thank you, and I yield back.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Permission to revise and extend my remarks?
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, it's hard to believe that the war on drugs has lasted 40 years. The stories of Americans who have suffered because of the war on drugs continue to flood my inbox. Even veterans who served our country are victims of our senseless drug war. For instance, Alex from Franklin, Ohio, wrote into me. Alex is a U.S. Army veteran with chronic pain and muscle spasms due to his service to our country. After returning from his deployment, he was put on opiate muscle relaxers from the VA clinic, which didn't work well for him. Following a friend's recommendation, he tried medical marijuana, and it worked for him. However, he was forced to quit in order to accept a new job, and his pain returned. He returned to the VA over and over again, searching for something to relieve the pain. Their only answer was to prescribe stronger and stronger opiates, far stronger narcotics than marijuana. When that didn't work, he was sent to physical therapists who didn't have an answer either. But because he lives in a state that doesn't offer access to medical marijuana, he's forced to have a very difficult decision between living with his pain or violating the law. Another person who wrote in is Bob from Fulton, Georgia, who wrote me to share the story of his wife who suffers from systemic lupus for over 30 years. Lupus has slowly deteriorated her body, destroying her hip joint and shoulders. Multiple doctors have said there's nothing they can do to relieve her pain. During those 3 decades, they've tried all sorts of powerful, approved, and legal narcotics to no avail. The only thing that has relieved her pain without side effect and makes her life better is medical marijuana. Again, unfortunately for Bob and his wife, their state does not have access to medical marijuana, like my home state of Colorado does and 14 other states. Bob ends the story about his wife by saying she's 65 years old and can only look forward to pain and agony. I'm sure there are many folks in our country in the same situation. Releasing them from the threat of arrest and incarceration simply for trying to live a pain-free life would be a godsend for these patients and their caregivers. Is this the reason that we're waging a war on drugs? To ensure that sick people continue to suffer from pain unnecessarily or are driven to buy stronger, more powerful, and more addictive narcotics? Now, there's a lot of views of what a more sensible marijuana policy might look like. My own approach is support for legalization and creating a regulatory system similar to what we have for alcohol and tobacco. We can regulate access, make sure people are not driving under the influence, prevent minors from accessing drugs, tax drugs, and engage in public outreach and education campaigns about the dangers of marijuana. Taxing and regulating marijuana would save taxpayers billions of dollars and generate revenue. In fact, each year, federal government spends $8 billion arresting and locking up nonviolent marijuana users. Again, not marijuana dealers, not marijuana growers. $8 billion spent locking up nonviolent marijuana users, like, for instance, if Alex, the veteran, or Bob's wife in Georgia could very well fall victim to that if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Taxing and regulating marijuana would also make our communities safer. Removing marijuana from the criminal market would free up police time so officers can focus on violent crimes, property crimes, people driving under the influence of alcohol, marijuana, or any other substance. Tax dollars could be used to incarcerate real criminals who threaten public safety, rather than veterans like Alex, who are simply using marijuana as a less powerful narcotic alternative to deal with their pain than the opiates that are fully legal under the law and prescribed at the VA. Instead of reaping these benefits, our country continues to suffer under the failed war on drugs. We need to put an end to this war on drugs, which has caused so much needless suffering. The government should treat its citizens like responsible adults instead of interfering in their lives, and should offer to help those suffering addiction instead of incarcerating them. The proper front to win the war against narcotics abuse in this country is a health war, not a war of violence. We are losing this war. Addicts continue to suffer needlessly every day. Those who would benefit from medical marijuana are continued to forced to violate the law or live their lives in pain. We can do better as a nation. Many states are leading the way, and we at the federal level need to pursue the direction that has been followed by an increasing number of states. and regulate the use of marijuana in a way that is compassionate, discourages usage among minors, and make sure that we have a health aspect to dealing with addiction where it exists. I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Huizenga, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to rise and come before this body to talk about something that I think is key, a key question that the American people have. We're dealing with a lot of weighty issues these days: Afghanistan, Libya, the debt ceiling, tax code and tax reform. But I believe the key question that we have before us is, and the key question that the American people have for us, is when and how will America get back to work? You know, Mr. Speaker, it's far more than just creating a bill and labeling it job creation bill, or a whole package of those, or a stimulus package of government spending that, frankly, hasn't worked and even admitted to and joked about by the President recently when he said those shovel-ready jobs and those shovel-ready projects maybe weren't so shovel-ready. No, they weren't. But it's far more than just creating a bill and labeling it job creation. It's about creating an atmosphere for private sector growth. You see, Mr. Speaker, the private sector creates prosperity, not the government sector. The government sector can give a job, but the private sector creates wealth and creates prosperity. And it's not just in our tax code and how that's being applied, but it's also in the regulatory atmosphere that we present to those job creators. Well, I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that this House is trying to inject some reasonableness into a system that has gone awry. Whether it's the EPA creating out of whole cloth regulations that we have not dictated should happen, or whether it's the National Labor Relations Board coming up with hurdle after hurdle for these job creators, this administration has continually overstepped the bounds of reasonableness. And it's our job, Mr. Speaker, to rein that in. You would think with 429,000 new jobless claims last week, let me repeat that, 429,000 new jobless claims, we would try to more aggressively create a better climate and to change that atmosphere. I can tell you we're trying to do that here in the House. We just need some partners across on the other side of the Capitol and in the administration as well. Recently, the House Republicans had an opportunity to meet with the President at the White House. And my good friend and chairman of the Small Business and Job Creators Caucus, of which I'm a member of, my friend from Wisconsin, Reed Ribble, got up and indicated to the President, we need to do 3 things for success. One, we need to have consumer confidence. And that means that whether people up in the balcony or watching on TV right now, the money that they have in their pocket, they feel confident enough that they're going to have a little extra, that they can go out and spend some money on an appliance or a car, very important for those of us from Michigan, or maybe on a vacation. We need to have some consumer confidence, and they don't have that right now. The other thing is we need to have credit be available to those small business creators, those job creators who are out there, who are cash flowing, who are continually to make those tough decisions to stay in the black, but they're now finding out that they can't access credit because of the unreasonable regulations that the Dodd-Frank banking bill has put in front of them. And lastly and thirdly, and maybe most importantly, we need certainty. We need a stability that has not been there for a number of years now. We need stability in our tax code. We need stability in our regulations. People basically need to know what the rules of the game are so that they can make long-term business decisions to again create those jobs. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's one of the reasons why I support the House's plan for American job creators, and I encourage you to go to my website, huizenga.house.gov, to see more about that. And again, it's not just a bill that's labeled job creation. It's about an attitude that we need to have. But in this package, we know that we need to remove red tape and excessive regulations that are out there. We know that we need to expand American domestic energy production. That's a must-do for us. We need to fix and streamline our tax code. We need to expand new markets abroad for the goods that our manufacturers make. But again, Mr. Speaker, it's not just a bill. It's an attitude. We need to have an attitude of, yes, we will work with you to help create those jobs, not no. It doesn't matter what your question is. The answer is no. We are not going to help. And that, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, has been the dominant attitude of this administration and of this government, and it's time that we change that. Thank you very much. I yield back the balance of my time.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Argonne, Mr. DeFazio, for 5 minutes.
The United States' objective in Afghanistan was to root out, destroy al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and their Taliban hosts. That job is done. Afghanistan has been superseded now as a haven for terrorists by tribal areas in Pakistan, Yemen, and Sudan. The inter- and intra-tribal disputes in Afghanistan are rooted in ancient history. And 12 to 36 more months of a large U.S. troop footprint is not going to resolve centuries-old conflicts among the Afghan tribes. There never has been, there never will be a strong central government in Afghanistan. So I disagree with the President's plan for a snail's pace partial drawdown of U.S. troops over the next few years. We should do it much more quickly and leave only a residual force to prevent a terrorist takeover. There were only a few thousand troops there when we drove out the Taliban and when we pursued Osama bin Laden. Unfortunately, we lost an early opportunity to capture and kill him because of mistakes by then-Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. But that being done, the President did say something last night with which I strongly agree. He said, "America, it is time to focus on nation building here at home." I couldn't agree more. I've been trying to do that for the last 2.5 years, but running into roadblocks down at the White House when I try and rebuild the nation's transportation infrastructure. Now, let's just think for a minute. We're borrowing and spending $120 billion a year in Afghanistan, both to support our troops and to engage in nation building, building them schools, building them highways, building them bridges, while our own schools, our own highways, our own bridges are crumbling and collapsing. $120 billion borrowed and spent in Afghanistan. What could we do with that here at home? We could begin to address the backlog of 150,000 bridges on our national highway system that need repair or replacement, the $70 billion backlog on our transit systems for basic capital maintenance, let alone new investment in new transit systems to more efficiently transport our people, to deal with the 40% of the pavement on the national highway system that's substandard, to deal with congestion in our major cities and our ports, to move freight and Americans more effectively. And in addressing that with $120 billion that we're borrowing and spending in Afghanistan today, and instead spending that money here at home, we can put over 3 million people to work. Not just construction workers. People say to me, well, Congressman, I don't work in construction. It's not just construction. We have the strongest Buy America requirements of transportation of any part of the government. That means when you buy a transit vehicle, it's going to be made in America. That's manufacturing, that's software, that's engineering, design. It goes all across the economy. It's small business suppliers, minority suppliers under the laws. We could put millions to work and stimulate our economy if that money was spent here. Last week, I confronted the President's deputy economic advisor, Mr. Furman, over these issues, and he did admit that instead of more tax cuts, which isn't putting anybody back to work, that's their one nostrum, which seems to have been adopted by the Obama administration. Hasn't worked for a decade, but if we cut them even more, that'll work then. It doesn't work. Investment works. We know it works. Let's invest. But the President's deputy economic advisor said, well, can't do that. Can't get the money to do that, but we can do a Social Security tax holiday and borrow $200 billion more and not put people back to work. Come on. Let's follow up on what the President said last night. Let's get serious about it, and let's make the investments here. America, it is time to focus on nation building here at home and put our people back to work and assure prosperity for future generations.
Gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, America. President Reagan once said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language were, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Recently, I met with job creators, small businesses, and mid-sized businesses in our East Texas district to talk about jobs. And I wish the President would have been with me to listen to the men and women who create jobs in my district, and they're like the men and women who create jobs across America. In meeting after meeting, job creators in my district made their voices heard loud and clear. They don't want another Washington jobs bill. They don't want government that taxes more, spends more, regulates more, and borrows more. They aren't looking to Washington for more incentives or tools to start hiring. Want more jobs, they asked? Then get your finances in order and get Washington out of the way of our economic recovery. They want this Congress to cut now and cut deep. And when this Congress thinks it's cut enough wasteful and non-essential government spending, they want this Congress to cut more. In other words, they want their lawmakers to do what it takes to get our nation back on sound footing. In Willis, City Council member Anna Ross asked, "We're making the tough choices in our city budget. When will the federal government do the same?" At the Conroe Rotary Club, Angela Allen told me she wants Washington to pay down the debt, go after fraud in Medicare, and above all, get out of the way of our job creators. In Orange, Texas, small business people flat out rejected more borrowed stimulus. They insist Congress not raise the debt ceiling unless we begin cutting up Washington's credit cards. And local hospital administrator Jaron Garrett said it as bluntly as can be: control spending. In Huntsville, Texas, I heard how concerned citizens how concerned people are over our huge job-killing tax code. Sandra Sherman not only wants us to stop the spending, she wants government out of so many areas of our lives, from housing and banking and medicine and energy, insurance, and other sectors. Evie Blissard sent a loud message that we should not give in to the big spenders. Evie's right. We can't give up the fight for a fair tax or to save Medicare and Social Security for our young people. I heard that same message in Livingston, Texas, and New Caney, Texas, where they said forcing fewer and fewer taxpayers to carry more and more of the federal government burden is a sure way to kill the golden goose of prosperity. Fear and uncertainty of what's coming next from Washington, including higher taxes, higher health care costs, higher energy costs, is keeping these employers from putting out that help wanted sign we're all looking for. In every town hall, round table, and civic club in my district, the 4-letter word on the lips of everyone's tongues was debt. Mr. President, Texas, the businesses who can help America pull out of its economic slump say it's time to cut up America's credit cards and end the spending spree in Washington. They'll tell you Washington doesn't back away from the cliff of more debt, more spending, more regulation, and more tax. They fear we might cease to recognize our great nation in the future. Today, 2 years after that economic recovery supposedly started, years after we spent $820 billion against our Republican objections, that stimulus, we have fewer Americans working today than when the stimulus began. 1.5 million people fewer working than when all that stimulus was supposed to jumpstart the economy. Manufacturing's down, factory orders down, consumer confidence is down. We were promised our unemployment rate right now would be 6.5%. Well, it's almost 9%. We have the longest number of people out of work, unemployed. It's almost at historic levels. We have fewer people working today than almost a quarter of a century ago, fewer people in the workforce than almost a generation. The stimulus failed. It's time for a new approach. It's time to listen to the job creators. What they really did like, by the way, was the Republican plan for America's job creators, to get the tax code out of the way of our small business people, to get higher energy and health care costs out of the way of our job creators. They want to lower the barriers so America compete and find new customers around the world, get those barriers out of the way. And they want a better business climate. more patent reform, more lawsuit reform. Get those extra costs out of the way of our small businesses. And they want us to get our financial house in order. Mr. President, get out of the White House. Listen to our job creators. They don't want more government jobs bills.